Welcome to our series, Recovery Happens in Mental Health. Today we're going to focus on isolation. And we have 4 folks here who are going to talk about their experiences with dealing with mental illness and isolation and the tools they use to get out of isolation. So first we'll start with Patrick, and then we'll hear from Kevin, and then Michelle, and then Tommy. Okay, Patrick?
Tell us a little bit about isolation. And I mean, we talk a lot about isolation as it relates to mental illness. What's important for consumers or someone who thinks, am I becoming isolated? Or if family members see someone and they think, is this normal? Should I just let them go? What are some of the signs and what do you do about it?
Well, some of the signs of isolation is just not wanting to talk or be around your friends, spending an inordinate amount of time alone. For me, it was being fearful of leaving the house at some points, depending on my level of anxiety. I pretty much completely isolated myself for 10 years after a suicide attempt because I wasn't sure how much longer I would be around, and I didn't want to have attachments with people because I wasn't going to be around much longer and I didn't want to invest that energy. In my mind, I had died in the suicide and was starting a new life and was trying to start all over again. So I kind of detached myself from family and friends, except for maybe one friend, and lived in complete isolation despite the fact that I was working the whole time for at least 10 years.
Wow.
And I didn't really come out of isolation fully until I started coming to the Trillium drop-in center. And I have to say that it was a real challenge for me to get my butt in here because I was afraid of people with mental illness. I hadn't been socializing with anybody else that was mentally ill. I was just seeing the doctor one-on-one. I was afraid that I would pick up some of the characteristics of people that were mentally ill and see I had stigma. And I had to overcome that. But the thought of coming in here by myself was scary. If I had had a therapist or a good friend or someone like me now, a CPS, helping bring people in and give them a tour and show them what the place is like, I could have come in at least a year earlier. But it took me a year to come in, just because of fear and coming in by myself, and it was a big deal.
Isolation can be brought on for different reasons. Sometimes people feel that they don't fit into with the public around them, or they're with others in general. And other times it's you're feeling symptoms and you feel that people won't understand, or your inside hurt is showing through your body language and facial expression or whatever, and that can be very traumatizing to you, and you feel that you have to hone in on yourself and try to not show those emotions because of the stigmas and the different things out there. And
But so in a way, isolation is a way of protecting yourself, but you know that it's not good for someone to become so isolated. So what advice do you have when someone is becoming so isolated? How do they get out of that?
a good way is going to a support group. There's some community support groups in the area here in Prince William County, as well as a Trillium drop-in center. Talking with people that are peers, or just getting around somebody, or even a loved one that can be supportive to you, and in a healthy way, that can be good. To express some of the emotion or some of the feelings, your therapist, your doctor, and everything.
And I'm hearing you say that it's important to take that first step.
Yes.
That first step is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Before you started recovery, one of the real signs that you really needed help was that you tended to isolate. I'm wondering if you can explain that a little bit more. What does isolation mean in terms of mental illness?
I was working for, I was working a particular job for 2 years, and left that job, and for whatever the circumstances were, I felt like I had failed. I ended up sleeping for just every day until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and really that was an attempt to not deal with life and not deal with my issues that were going on for me. And then if I was awake, I was at home, and the only time I would leave my home was to go to appointments, and usually those appointments were in fact concerning my mental illness. They would be an appointment for therapy or a psychiatrist, and so it seemed actually that my whole life was kind of revolved around my illness, and then I was just always at home, and it was I was very isolated. I was not, I had maybe one friend that I talked to on the phone quite a bit. Maybe rarely went out and saw people. And of course I made dinner for my husband. That was really important to me. But that was a very isolated time for me.
Okay, and isolation is very easy for me to do. My counselor tells me, Tommy, you're not going to get better unless you get off your couch and move. Go to church, go to work, go to your 12-step fellowship meetings. But if you just stay on the couch and isolate from everybody, which I'm very good at doing, it just makes the depression that much worse. And I'm very blessed to have a job that is more than a job. It's like a vocation. And my boss is excellent. This is part of my mental health recovery and my substance abuse recovery.
Fabulous.
And I have an opportunity, possibly, to venture to another area to work, but I don't want to leave here full time. I want to make sure I come back here a couple days a week.
But what you're doing in terms of helping others on their road to recovery is an invaluable service to the community, to yourself, and we thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you.
So if someone is watching now who says, I don't want to leave the house, I don't want to do anything, how do they make that? What would you tell them to do in terms of making that first step?
Well, I would make the first step with the closest person to me, and I would just talk about it, and I would try to see a therapist. I think that's really important. They can map out some goals for you to slowly take baby steps to get yourself out of isolation. You can't just come out one day and be an extrovert when you're used to being in isolation for years. It takes time. You got to develop a supportive a support group, people that are supportive of what your situation is and who care about you and want the best for you. So start with those people and then expand.
Were there times, during those 10 years, did you feel that you wanted to get out of this isolation, or did you find comfort in that isolation?
I found comfort in the isolation. It was very comforting to me. I didn't want to be around people. I was afraid that they would hurt me. I was afraid that I would hurt them. If I committed suicide and we were close, I wanted to be detached from the world completely. The only time that I really socialized was when I did landscaping for that 10 years, and I was around the people that I work with. But I would just go to work, do my job, come home, and then be isolated again. And that was my safe place. My apartment is my sanctuary, and I would retreat to it and stay there where it was safe.
And so it's very hard. If you feel that, if you can imagine people who feel safe,
Right.
and they're isolated, it's very hard to reach them and say, there's a difference. There's a different kind of life.
It is hard, and they kind of have to be willing to take that very first step. I know people who are living in isolation, and it's a safe place for them, and they might not be ready to come out yet. And I don't believe in pressuring people to do so. I just believe in encouraging them and giving them support and if we can bring them in here and give them a tour, show them that this is a safe place so they can come and expand their social circle.
And how is your life better now that you're not sort of sequestered in your apartment?
Well, I have more friends than I've ever had. I've got more of a support system than I've ever had. I've never known this many people by name in my life. I probably know over 100 people just from coming here, if not more. I'm much more extroverted. My natural state is an introvert, but I get paid to be an extrovert, so that's what I do. When I come to work, I come out of my shell and do what I can to help everybody. But when I go home, I'm pretty much an introvert, and I just kind of keep to myself. But I'm not isolated. I have friends. I go out. I go out to eat. I go over and watch TV with some buddies every Friday night. So I have all different types of friends, a circle of friends. My work friends, my peer friends, my home friends, so I'm surrounded by a good support system primarily.
You sound happy. Are you happy?
I am happy. I'm pretty content.